Imagine walking into your own office and having to ask permission to take a lunch break from a man you pay six figures to pretend he's your boss. To the world, he's the visionary CEO of a multi-million-dollar empire, a man whose face is on the cover of magazines and whose name is whispered in the halls of high finance. To me, he's just an actor I hired to keep a target off my back. My name is Alex, and I have $850 million in the bank. But if you met me, you'd think I was just another junior operations assistant who's a little too obsessed with his spreadsheets. I'm going to tell you exactly why I decided to disappear inside my own company, how I found the man to play me, and the terrifying moment it all almost came crashing down. Most people think having nearly $1 billion solves every problem you've ever had. And in a way, it does. You never worry about rent again. You don't look at the price of the steak on the menu, and your family's future is secure for generations. But money doesn't just buy things, it buys attention. The moment the news broke that my tech startup had been acquired for nearly $1 billion, my world didn't get bigger, it got smaller. My phone didn't stop ringing for 3 weeks. People I hadn't spoken to since third grade were suddenly my best friends. My inbox was a graveyard of business pitches, sob stories, and subtle threats. I couldn't walk into a coffee shop without feeling like there was a neon sign over my head. I realized very quickly that being a rich person is easy, but being a known rich person is a nightmare. I saw what happened to lottery winners and young founders. They get sued. They get kidnapped. They get isolated. I didn't want to be a celebrity. I just wanted to be free. That's when the idea for the proxy began. I decided to start a new venture, a private equity firm that would manage my wealth and invest in new ideas. But there was a catch. No one could know I owned it. I needed a face. I needed someone who looked like a leader, someone who could command a room, someone who could take the credit and, more importantly, the heat. I spent 3 months vetting candidates under the guise of hiring a high-level executive for a mystery client. I didn't look at resumes first. I looked at presence. I needed someone with a certain kind of ego, someone who would enjoy the spotlight enough to never want to step out of it. That's when I found Robert. Robert was a 55-year-old former theater actor who had spent the last decade doing corporate training videos. He had a voice like mahogany and a silver mane of hair that screamed stability and wisdom. He was also broke and desperate for a legacy. I sat him down in a nondescript hotel room and told him the truth. I told him he wouldn't just be an employee. He would be the public face of the empire. He would sign the documents I told him to sign. He would give the speeches I wrote for him. And he would take the $85,000 a month salary I offered without asking too many questions. The look in his eyes wasn't fear, it was hunger. He accepted before I even finished the sentence. We spent 6 months in intensive training. I taught him the basics of venture capital, the jargon of the industry, and the specific history of a company that didn't yet exist. I curated his entire life. I bought him a house, a car, and a wardrobe that cost more than my first apartment. We built a narrative. Robert was the veteran investor coming out of retirement for one last big play. And me? I was just Alex, the guy he hired to handle the day-to-day logistics. The day we opened our offices in downtown Manhattan was one of the strangest experiences of my life. I walked through the glass doors behind Robert, carrying his briefcase. The staff we had hired, 25 of the brightest minds in the city, all stood up and looked at him with awe. They saw a titan. They saw the man who was going to make them all rich. Robert handled it perfectly. He walked with a calculated stride, nodding to the team, before disappearing into the massive corner office with my name on the lease and his name on the door. I sat at a cubicle in the middle of the floor, right next to the kitchen. My desk was cluttered with half-empty coffee cups and stacks of filing folders. It was perfect. For the first year, the plan worked better than I ever could have imagined. I was able to observe my employees without the filter of power. When you're the boss, everyone tells you what you want to hear. They laugh at your bad jokes and agree with your worst ideas. But when you're the assistant, you hear everything. I knew who was actually working and who was just pretending. I knew which managers were toxic and which ones were the real stars. I was the invisible hand. I would write detailed memos and strategic plans, hand them to Robert in his office, and an hour later, he would announce them as his own brilliance. I watched the company's value grow by $200 million in 12 months, all while I stayed under the radar. I would go to the company happy hours and listen to my coworkers complain about Robert's ego or his lack of technical knowledge, and I would just nod and sip my beer, smiling internally. But then, the power started to shift. You see, the problem with hiring an actor to play a king is that eventually, the actor starts to think he actually wears the crown. Robert began to enjoy the fame. He was being invited to speak at major conferences. He was being featured in lists of the most influential people in finance. People were calling him a genius. And the more the world told him he was a genius, the more he started to believe it. He started making small changes to the scripts I gave him. At first, it was just a few words here and there. Then, it was entire paragraphs. He started taking meetings without telling me. He bought a second home in the Hamptons with his salary and started hosting parties for people I didn't know. The dynamic at the office changed. He started treating me like a real assistant. He'd snap his fingers for coffee or demand I stay late to fix a typo in a report he hadn't even read. I realized I had created a monster. The breaking point came during a high-stakes negotiation with a Silicon Valley giant. We were looking to acquire a cybersecurity firm, a move that would have been the biggest deal in our company's history. I had spent weeks mapping out the strategy. I had found the weaknesses in their defense and the exact leverage we needed to get a fair price. I gave Robert a strict set of instructions. Do not go above 400 million. If they push, we walk. We walked into the boardroom, and I took my place at the back of the room with my laptop, ready to take notes. Robert was at the head of the table, looking every bit the mogul. The other side was aggressive. They pushed hard, testing his resolve. And instead of following the plan, Robert got caught up in the performance. He wanted to be the hero. He wanted to be the man who closed the deal that everyone said was impossible. In a moment of pure, unadulterated ego, he looked their CEO in the eye and offered $550 million. My heart stopped. That was $150 million of my money he had just thrown away for a headline. I tried to catch his eye, to give him the signal to stop, but he wouldn't look at me. He was basking in the gasps of the room. He felt powerful. That night, I waited until everyone had left the office. I walked into the corner office, the one with his name on the door. He was sitting behind the desk, feet up, sipping a glass of expensive scotch. He didn't even look up when I walked in. He just told me I had missed a memo on his desk. I didn't say a word. I just pulled a folder out of my bag and laid it in front of him. It was the original contract he had signed in that hotel room 2 years prior. I reminded him that every cent he spent, every brick in that office, and every ounce of the reputation he had built belonged to me. I told him that I could end the charade in 10 minutes with a single press release. The transformation was instant. The cocky, high-flying CEO vanished, and the scared, aging actor returned. He realized that while he had the fame, I had the control. We stayed in that office until 3 in the morning. I made it clear that the experiment was changing. From that day on, Robert became a true proxy again. We restructured the company so that every major decision required a triple encrypted digital signature that only I possessed. We created a narrative that Robert was delegating more to focus on global philanthropy, which gave me even more room to operate behind the scenes. People often ask me if I regret it. They ask if it hurts to see someone else take the credit for my hard work and my vision. But the truth is, I've never been happier. I get to do the work I love without the burden of the identity that comes with it. I can walk through Central Park and no one knows who I am. I can sit in a restaurant and no one is trying to pitch me an app. I have the ultimate luxury, the ability to be nobody. My fake boss is still out there, giving interviews and winning awards. He gets the stress of the spotlight, the paparazzi, and the constant pressure to perform. I get the results. I've realized that the greatest power in the world isn't being known. It's being the person the known people are afraid of. I'm the ghost in the machine of my own life, and I wouldn't have it any other way. In a world where everyone is fighting for their 15 minutes of fame, there is a profound peace in being the one who owns the clock. If you ever find yourself coming into a massive amount of money, my advice is simple. Buy yourself a nice house, help the people you love, and then hire someone else to be the person the world thinks you are. It's the only way to stay human.